Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, then welcome. Today is episode 2 of my new Makeup and Murder series. And if you're unaware, my Makeup and Murder series is where I sit down and do my makeup while I talk to you guys about the latest murder mystery that has been weighing on me and that I have been obsessing over, because let's be honest, I get a little obsessive. Alright, so last week we talked about Robert Hansen, and he was an Alaskan serial killer. While I was looking up information on Robert, I came across another Alaskan murders that caught my attention. So we're going back to Alaska for today's Makeup and Murder, and today we'll be talking about the Colthurst family. So this story takes place a lot like the last one, also in the early 1980s. So it's the summer of 1982, and John and Sally Colthurst have recently purchased a new fishing boat, and they have decided to appoint their son Mark as co-owner and skipper of the Investor. The Investor was a 58-foot fishing boat that cost the Colthursts approximately $800,000, which is a lot of money, especially back then. Rightfully so, the family was extremely proud of this fishing boat, and Mark was even known to give tours of the vessel. So, summer of 1982, Mark sets sail along with his pregnant wife Irene and their 2 kids, 5-year-old Kimberly and 4-year-old John, and their 4 crew members, 19-year-old Jerome Keown, Dean Moon, Mike Stewart, who was a cousin of Mark, and 18-year-old Chris Heyman. After docking in Craig, Alaska, the Colthursts and the crew of the Investor headed into Craig on September 4th to celebrate Mark's 28th birthday and their extremely successful summer of fishing. This is the last reported sighting of the Colthurst family and the crew. So on that following Monday, Irene and the kids were scheduled to fly out of Alaska and head back to Washington because Kimberly was getting ready to start kindergarten. So Mark and the rest of the crew were set to take the boat back to Washington, where he would meet up with his family. But on September 6th, in the early hours of the morning, the other fishing vessels that they were docked next to noticed that the Investor started drifting away. And a crew member on another boat named the Decade noticed somebody in the wheelhouse and also someone at the stern of the Investor, and he wasn't sure who they were, but he waved and they just kind of waved back, and he didn't really think anything more of it until he noticed that the Investor did not take their tie-off ropes with them. So if you don't know anything about boats, when you dock, you have ropes that are connected to your boat and you tie them up to the docks. That way you don't just like drift off in the sea in the middle, like when you're not on the boat or anything, you know what I mean? Like, you need these ropes. And the Decade crew member found this extremely weird because, like I said, you need these ropes, and you're not just going to leave your ropes behind, because if you did that, you would have to have a lot of rope and be constantly buying new rope. So he didn't really think anything more of it, but he just found it very odd. And then on September 7th, another boat called the Casino noticed the Investor in a cove on Fish Eggs Island on fire. So they called the Coast Guard to let them know about this boat on fire, and then they start heading towards the Investor to try to basically start a rescue mission, see what they can do to help, get the crew members off the boat, and if there's anybody on there and if they're alive. And while they're headed towards the Investor, they come across the Investor's skiff. So once again, if you're unaware about boats, it's the little tiny boat that goes on the boat in case your boat is sinking, then you can get off. So they wave down the skiff and talk to the guy a little bit, but I'm not really sure what they talked to him about. Was not able to find any information on that. And after talking to him for a little bit, he heads on towards the beach and they head on towards the Investor. Once the Coast Guard arrives, They have 2 water pumps flown in and placed on a tugboat so they can attempt to put out this fire. And after a few hours, I'm assuming, of fighting this fire, they get it out, and once police are able to get on board of the boat, they immediately come upon 3 adult bodies and 1 child's body, and they aren't able to determine whose body is whose at first because they were so badly burned. It would take dental records to confirm that they had found Mark and Irene Colthurst, along with their 5-year-old daughter Kimberly and Mark's cousin Mike. After police find these 4 bodies, they notice that 2 of them, who turned out to be Mark and Irene, had gunshot wounds to the head from a .22 caliber gun. But after the discovery of these 4 bodies, the boat catches fire again, and they obviously have to get off the boat and work to put this fire out again. This fire just starts raging out of control, and it would be 2 more days before police are even able to get back on the boat. But in this time, while the boat is on fire, they have to work to get the boat to shore because they don't want it to just burn and sink into the ocean where they would never be able to find any of the other remains. And that is actually what people believe the murderer's intent was, to set the boat on fire out at sea, because it was a very hazy day that day and you would not have been able to see it from the shore very well. So he was hoping that it would just burn unnoticed and sink, never to be found, and everyone on board would just sink right along with the ship and no one would ever know whatever happened to this family and the crew members. So luckily they're able to move the boat to shore, where they are able to successfully put out the fire this time. Once police are able to board the Investor again, they find more remains. This time they're even more badly burned than before, to the point where they are not even sure how many bodies they have found, and they are definitely not able to determine if anybody else was also shot in the head, but it's just assumed that they were all shot in the head before the Investor was set on fire. But they suspect that they have found either the bodies of Jerome, Chris, or Dean, or even all 3, but they are unable to find 4-year-old John's body. It's assumed that he was just completely consumed by the fire. Police are quick to assume that the fire is arson, not only because the fuel was stored in the back of the boat and the fire was started in the front of the boat, but also because the boat was equipped with sprinkler systems to prevent a fire from spreading if it were to start in any of the places where a fire would normally start on a boat. When police told Mark's parents about how they had died, Mark's father, John, had even said when he bought the boat, he had told Mark that this was a very safe boat. They would have it for a really long time and they would never have to worry about it catching fire because it was built in a way that it just shouldn't. And with the sprinkler systems, yeah, it should just last forever. So at this point, police know for sure that not only do they have what looks like 8 murders on their hands, but also a case of arson. So with no clear suspect, police kind of start to think that maybe whoever's remains they were unable to identify, maybe one of these crew members had something to do with it. Maybe they didn't think they were getting paid enough and killed everybody for extra money, or they just got greedy and killed everybody for the money. They even brought this theory up to Mark's parents, at which point his father John says, absolutely not. Mark had a great crew. He handpicked them for this fishing season because it was a new boat. They'd all worked together before and he really liked them, and working on a new boat is an honor, so these kids would not just kill him for money when he was basically doing them a service. It was just a really big deal to get to work on a brand new boat, and he just did not believe that any of his 4 crew members would have killed his son and his whole entire family. At this point, police start receiving tips from crew members of the casino who reported that the man on the skiff had a scar on his face and he was wearing a hat and he was in about his 20s. So they start to develop their first suspect based on this information about this mysterious man in the skiff. They also talked to people who were on the beach watching, and they reported the same thing: a man with a scar on his face, in his 20s, wearing a hat. And police even get a report of a man matching this description buying 2.5 gallons of gas at a local gas station. So they're thinking that whoever this man that was seen on the skiff has got to be their murderer. And police are starting to realize that this description does not match any of the crew members that have yet to be identified, so that theory is pretty much dead in the water at this point. After a few months, with still basically no leads, police head to Washington to talk to friends and family of the victims, as well as past employees of Mark and John. They were just really hoping for any information that would lead them in the right direction of a suspect. They were looking for anything in their past that would maybe tie into this last fishing journey that they went on, and they still were unable to find anything. Finally, they're able to get a positive ID on that last set of remains they found, and they were identified as Jerome Keown, but they were still never able to positively identify anything as being either Chris Heyman or Dean Moon. But after getting confirmation from the eyewitnesses that the description of the assailant does not seem to match either Chris or Dean, police officially believe that all 8 members of the Investor are dead. They're able to get a sketch made up of the person that people had described seeing on the skiff, and also it matched the description of the person who was seen buying gas. So police start distributing this sketch all around Craig, Alaska, as well as sending it to everyone that held a current commercial fishing license and would use the port in Craig. The city of Blaine, Washington, where the Coldhursts were from, had even put out a reward of $15,000 for any information that would lead to the arrest of the murderer. At this point, police aren't even positive how the 8 people on board the Investor were murdered because they did not have a crime scene. They speculated maybe Mark and Irene were killed elsewhere and brought back to the ship. They really just did not even know, because the crime scene burnt up right along with the Investor. So the case goes cold for about 2 years when police start looking closely at past deckhands of Mark's, when they come across a man who fit the description of the sketch, and this man is John Peel. He was a deckhand for Mark between 1980 and 1982, and he also dated Mark's sister. According to friends and family, Mark had fired John in 1982 because on past voyages he was known to get drunk and to do drugs, and Mark just especially did not want that around his children. According to his friends and family, he was just trying to do things the right way because drugs were very rampant among that community, especially back then. But John says that he did not get fired. Of course, he's going to deny that. He just claims that he got hired on another ship and that's why he left. Police ask John if he would be willing to take a polygraph, and he agrees and fails. During this time, police put a lot of faith in a polygraph test, especially a failed one. They thought 100% this guy failed his polygraph, he did it. John did not have a great alibi for that night either. He claimed to be asleep on the fishing boat that he was currently employed at. Combining that with his failed polygraph, police are certain that they have caught the murderer. But knowing that a polygraph does not hold up in court, and with only circumstantial evidence against John, police choose not to arrest him immediately. In 1985, police go in and arrest John, saying his motive was retaliation for being fired. And their theory is that he boarded the ship and then he proceeded to shoot everyone on board with a .22 caliber gun. He then drifts the boat out, where he proceeds to drive it to the Fish Egg Island and gets on the skiff, goes into town, buys 2.5 gallons of fuel, goes back to the boat, douses it with the gasoline, sets it on fire, and heads back to the beach, where he's then spotted by the casino crew members as well as people on the beach. So then in 1986, John officially goes on trial for 8 counts of first-degree murder and arson. The state's case was, like I said, mainly circumstantial. They focused on all the circumstantial evidence, such as him being fired, and the eyewitness accounts saying that they saw him on the skiff. Also during the trial, a skipper on another boat claimed that he had seen John boarding the Investor the night of the murders. The trial is not seemingly going very well for John, but John's defense is not letting them just completely throw him under the bus. They're saying during this time, there were approximately 500 other fishermen in Craig, and they tended to dress alike, and a lot of them even looked alike. So how could they be sure that John was the man that they saw? They also brought up this theory of a drug deal gone bad, because some people suspected that the Coulthursts bought the Investor using drug money. They even suggested maybe either Chris Heyman or Dean Moon were responsible for the murders because their remains were never found. About a year after the murders, there was a reported sighting of Dean Moon in San Francisco, but the man who claims to have seen him said that when he called out to him, he didn't seem to go by that name. He looked at him like he had no idea who he was. He didn't seem to have any fear of being caught at all, so police just chalk that up to a case of mistaken identity. When the jury finally gets the case, they deliberate for 6 days and end up coming back a hung jury. The Coulthurst family was disappointed, but they said they just wanted whoever was responsible to be caught, while Dean Moon's mother said she firmly believed that John Peel was guilty and that he should pay for what he did to her son as well as everyone else that was murdered that night. But John's not done yet. In January of 1988, they begin trial number 2. This trial is very similar to the first one. It's all circumstantial evidence once again, and his defense is basically the same as the first trial. An odd little fact that I found about the trial, I'm not really sure which one this happened in, if it was in both or just one of them, but John would wear a full ski mask, and some people speculate that it was to keep his face out of the press, while others speculate that it was to keep the eyewitnesses from being able to identify him in court. What do you guys think? I kind of think if he did it, I mean, wearing a ski mask is a really good way to keep people from being able to point you out in court. Plausible to me. So after about 3 more months in court, they give the case to the jury once again. This time they deliberate for 4 days before coming back, finding John Peel not guilty on all 8 counts of murder as well as the arson. They acquit him. Then in 1990, John filed a wrongful prosecution suit for $177 million. He fought with the state of Alaska for 7 years in court before the state finally agreed to settle for $900,000 for his time and legal fees, which honestly, that does not seem like enough. If he's not guilty, like, he should have gotten way more than that. It's really not that much, especially when he was asking for $177 million, which is just an odd number. Why 177? Why not 180? This is just a weird case. To this day, the case has never been reopened, and police consider it closed by arrest and trial. Police 1000% think they got it right, and the jury just got it wrong, stating, quote, "Just because someone is acquitted doesn't mean they're innocent. It just means that there wasn't enough evidence to show guilt beyond a reasonable doubt." I mean, they're not wrong. That's truly what it means. Like, he could be guilty, and there's just no evidence in the case. No hard, solid evidence. Most people want the murder weapon, the DNA, the fingerprints. They want that to be able to convict somebody of murder, which There's far too many people incarcerated wrongfully in our country, so it's not a bad thing. After everything that went down with John, he was quoted saying, "It's terrible being an innocent man accused of a crime. I just thank God it's over. Justice did work this time. Somebody was responsible for this. Somebody out there knows what happened." Is it him? I don't know. I really, really hate unsolved cases just because, like, we'll never know. This case is well over 30 years old and we still don't know. Do you think that Dean Mooney is still alive and out there somewhere and that he's the one who committed these murders? Or do you think they got it right with John Peel? So what do you all think of this? Like, who do you think did it? Do you buy the theory of Dean Moon being the murderer and just being able to fly under the radar for the past 30 years? Or do you believe that it was John Peel and the jury just didn't get it right because there was not enough evidence? Honestly, I find the whole ski mask thing to be very suspicious and kind of leads me to believe that he did it. Why else would he wear the ski mask? Like, it's not like I was able to find pictures of him, so I don't buy the whole he wore them to keep his face out of the media. I don't know. I just find it very, very odd that he would wear a ski mask if he was innocent. What do you guys think? Do you also find the ski mask thing very odd and suspicious? Or do you think entirely somebody else did it, that it was not John Peel or Dean Moon? Maybe it was Chris Heyman, because they never were able to positively ID him either. Like, I don't know, I kind of think Peel did it. I kind of think he did. But the motive just is not very good. I don't know. This is just a weird story. Some people even believe that maybe Mark was the culprit. He killed his family and his whole crew and then himself, but then who would set the fire? I don't buy that story. I don't know. What do you guys think? Crazy, crazy story. Let me know in the comments, obviously, who you think did it, who you guys would like to see me talk about next time. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Be sure to hit the subscribe button if you're into makeup and murder. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye!